It was a quiet Friday morning on the south side, around the 5800 block of South King Drive. The gold sedan moved slow like it had nowhere to be. People crossing the street didn't think much about it until the door cracked open and the air filled with gunfire. When it stopped, Jerome Lil Boo Anderson was on the ground, bleeding out under the same sun he used to walk proud beneath. They said if Boo sent you on a mission, you came back with a body, but that morning, it was him who never made it back. To understand that last walk, you gotta rewind 6 years back to the block that made him who he was. Before Lil Boo became a name that carried weight in Chiraq, he was just Jerome from 59th and Calumet, another kid trying to survive what Chicago had turned into. The projects were coming down around that time, and people got pushed from one block to another. The old high-rises in the mid-90s were gone, but the problem stayed, just spread out wider. Every corner had its own code, and every young man had to decide whether to follow it or fight against it. Jerome grew up seeing guns before he saw opportunity, and that shaped how he moved early. The area around 59th Street wasn't just poor, it was forgotten. When Cabrini Green and Stateway Gardens got torn down, families flooded into nearby neighborhoods, stacking tension on top of tension. By the time Jerome hit middle school, the older guys already had the streets claimed. There were gangster disciples posted on the corners, running small hustles and teaching the next ones how to handle themselves. Those older heads went by names like Trigger and Domo, the type who didn't need to say much because everybody knew what they stood for. Jerome used to hang around them, soaking everything in. He wasn't reckless, he was the quiet one who watched before he spoke. People said he had that look in his eyes like he was always studying. Trigger and Domo kept their little brothers out of the dirt, trying to keep the youngest ones from getting caught in beefs they couldn't survive. That left Jerome and his friend Devin Varner, who everybody called the Thong, feeling like outsiders. They were tired of being told to wait, tired of watching others get stripes while they stood on the sideline. By the time 2008 rolled around, Jerome and Dethong decided to do their own thing. They started with a few younger kids, calling their little group Brick City after the buildings that used to stand nearby. It started as a small clique, more about respect than money, but Chicago had a way of turning everything into a battlefield. Rival sets began noticing them, and it didn't take long before loyalty became survival. Somewhere in that mix, Jerome stopped being Jerome. He started calling himself Black Jesus, saying he was ready to rise through the chaos, ready to lead. That name didn't last long, but it showed what was building inside him. He wasn't loud about it, he just carried himself like he knew where he was heading. Brick City ran under the Gangster Disciples flag at first, but things changed when Jerome and Dethon got close with some kids from the Black Disciples side. They shared the same blocks, the same schools, and the same enemies. Lines blurred until one day they crossed fully. They flipped their allegiance to BD, marking a shift that would shape their future, and the future of their whole neighborhood. Older heads said that move was bold, maybe even suicidal, but for Jerome it was simple. He wanted to build something that belonged to him. With Dethong by his side, he started forming what would soon be known as Team 600. Those who knew him back then said he rarely smiled, barely talked, and when he did, it was to give orders. By the time people started calling him Lil Boo, his reputation was already forming. He wasn't just another young hustler, he was becoming the kind of man who made others nervous. As one old neighbor said later, Lil Boo don't talk much, but he shoot fast. By 2009, the block around 60th and King Drive was buzzing with new energy and a little fear. Jerome Lil Boo Anderson and Devin Dethong Varner made it official that year, turning their small Brick City crew into a full Black Disciple set. They called it Team 600, pulling the name from 60th Street, the ground they walked every day. It wasn't just a name, it was their identity, something they built from frustration, loyalty, and pride. People on the South Side started hearing about them quick because they moved different and dressed different. They picked the Texas Rangers cap with the big T on it, flipping the meaning from Texas to trouble. It became their stamp, something you could spot from a block away. Their colors mixed blue, white, and red, breaking the usual rules and making other sets guess what they were repping. That confusion was part of their strategy because it made them unpredictable. They carried both Gangster Disciple roots and Black Disciple loyalty, something almost no other crew did at that time. Lil Boo handled things like a soldier who knew war was coming. He was quiet, but he had rules that nobody questioned. The main one was simple. You didn't claim 600 until you proved you were ready. Word spread fast around the South Side that Boo told his young recruits, you don't claim 600 till you put in work. That meant sliding on ops, hitting a lick, or at least showing you could hold your own. It wasn't about being loud or famous, it was about survival and discipline. The early 600 lineup was stacked with names that would soon shake the drill world. You had E-Die, S. Dot, Rondo Nimbanine, C. Die, L.A. Capone, Tay 600, and D.Rose. Most of them were still teenagers, but under Boo's guidance, they were learning to move like veterans. Boo taught them everything from how to strip a Glock to how to switch cars after a mission. He was strict but respected, and most of the young homies saw him as a big brother more than a boss. On that same block, the drill sound was starting to bubble. Chicago's young rappers were using YouTube to tell stories nobody else wanted to hear. By 2011, E.D.I. dropped FTO, which stood for Fuck the Ops, and that record lit the fuse for a new kind of war. The track got under the skin of rival GD rappers like FBG Duck and Billionaire Black from STL and EBT. They fired back with their remix called E.D.I. Is You Serious, turning rap beef into a full-blown neighborhood conflict. Boo wasn't a rapper, but he was part of the engine behind that movement. He was the one who told his people to protect the artists because every rapper represented their street. That made 600's music dangerous because every lyric had blood behind it. When E.D.I. shouted Steve Drive or 600 Boys, he wasn't just making noise. He was paying tribute to real people like Lil Steve, Baldy, and D-Thang, who had died for that name. Social media turned everything faster. Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube became places where people bragged, threatened, and mocked the dead. Boo never posted much, but his younger members did. They flashed guns, tagged rivals, and joked about bodies that had just dropped. Chicago police started following those pages like they were watching reality TV. Every post brought more heat, and every diss song brought another shooting. By the time 2012 came around, 600 wasn't just another BD set. They were becoming a symbol of what drill culture looked like when music and murder mixed together. Their rivals from M.O.B., Gyro City, and 051 Young Money saw them as a direct threat. Every time a 600 song hit the internet, an enemy clique tried to respond with bullets. People on the south side started keeping count like it was a scoreboard. Boo kept most of the operations tight. He stayed off social media, using payphones or face-to-face meetings instead. He told his young boys to move smart because he knew how quick Chicago detectives link things. He also made sure they had safe houses where they could stash guns or chill after a slide. Boo might have been quiet, but he had the kind of authority that made even the loudest ones fall back. To the little homies, he was two different people. On one hand, he was the big brother who bought food and checked on them when their moms kicked them out. On the other, he was the cold shooter who expected results every time somebody disrespected 600. People close to him said Boo lived by a code that didn't leave room for softness. He believed every hit had a reason, and every reason had to be answered. The city around them was changing too. Chicago was turning into something darker, something digital. Street beefs that once stayed in alleys were now live on YouTube, and fans were cheering for sides like it was a sport. Boo watched it all from the shadows, knowing fame would bring attention the block didn't need. But the young rappers wanted that light because fame meant power and money, even if it came with enemies. Police reports started mentioning 600 by name. Officers labeled them as a violent faction of the Black Disciples involved in multiple shootings near Washington Park and Inglewood. Detectives started linking them to bodies across 59th through 63rd. Boo understood that once your name hit paperwork, there was no going back. Still, he didn't slow down because slowing down meant losing control. By 2013, the legend of 600 was cemented. They weren't the biggest set, but they were the most organized. Every name carried weight, and every enemy knew what that TCAP stood for. Boo's methods turned the crew from neighborhood soldiers into an army that made whole blocks nervous. The older heads respected his discipline, and the younger ones followed him without question. People used to say 600 was like a small nation, and Boo was the general who kept it together. The streets around 60th and King Drive became known as Steve Drive, named after Lil Steve, who got killed that same year. Murals covered the corners, and the sound of E.D.I.'s lyrics blasted from cars driving by. Everything felt bigger, louder, and closer to the edge. But with more fame came more danger. Rival sets were watching, plotting, and waiting. Boo had built something powerful, but even he knew that power in Chicago came with a target. The same streets that made him were filling with enemies who wanted to take his place. And soon, the attention they wanted would bring a kind of heat they couldn't control. By the summer of 2011, the energy around 60th and King Drive was electric and heavy at the same time. Team 600 was growing fast, getting recognition, and their names started traveling through nearby sets. The more people heard about them, the more enemies started paying attention. You could feel the tension walking down Prairie Avenue because every car that slowed down too much made people reach for something. July 17, 2011 was the day everything changed for them. Marcus Baldy London was one of the earliest members, one of the ones who helped Boo and D.Thang build the block's respect. That night, Baldy was walking near 60th and Prairie with Stunna and a few other homies when gunfire cracked from across the street. Witnesses said a car pulled up slow, lights off, and shots started flying before anyone could react. Baldy got hit in the head, and by the time they rushed him to Mount Sinai Hospital, he was already gone. Word spread through the South Side quick, and within an hour, people were saying it was a MOB hit. Some even mentioned names, claiming shooters from the gangster disciple set known as MOB did it. Nobody was arrested, but everyone in 600 believed it. The next morning, the walls around the block carried fresh graffiti that read, "Long live Baldy." Social media started lighting up with die L's for Baldy, calling out anyone who threw up the L sign of the GDs. That loss stung because Baldy wasn't just a soldier, he was family to most of them. For Boo, it was the first real test of leadership. He didn't talk much during the funeral, but people noticed how his focus changed. He became colder and more disciplined, like he understood that every smile could hide an enemy. Baldy's death pushed him to tighten the rules, making sure everyone carried their weapon and stayed ready at all times. Then September hit, and 600 took another loss that cut even deeper. On September 13, 2011, Devin DeThong Varner, Boo's co-founder and closest friend, got killed on King Drive. Reports said he was sitting inside a car when a man named Dome from Jaro City rolled up. DeThong tried to run, but Dome chased him down and shot him in the back. He was rushed to Stroger Hospital, but didn't make it. Police arrested Dome that December, charging him with murder, but the damage was already done. DeThong's death shook 600 hard because he wasn't just another member. He was the heart of the set. He was the loud one, the motivator, the one who hyped the young boys to keep pushing. Without him, the crew felt hollow. People started looking at Boo differently because he was the only one left from the original two. The streets whispered that he would fall next, but Boo didn't flinch. He moved quieter, started making plans, and began handling things personally instead of sending others. 6 days later, the streets took another young one. On September 19, 2011, 15-year-old Stephen Lil Steve McGee was walking near 60th and Prairie when gunfire erupted again. Witnesses said a 14-year-old named Scrap from MOB stepped out of an alley and opened fire. Lil Steve was hit in the head and torso before he hit the ground. He was just a kid, one of the youngest in 600, and his death broke whatever was left of their patience. Police later listed Scrap and another MOB member named Moochie as suspects, but both disappeared before any arrest. That week changed how 600 operated. The block went from loud laughter to whispers, from rap dreams to revenge talks. Boo became a different man after that. He told everyone straight, "This ain't about fame no more, it's about payback." The group stopped caring about parties or videos. Every night was about sliding, scouting, and settling scores. The first retaliation came quick. On November 10th, 2011, a 17-year-old named Tutu from Jaro City was found shot in the head and torso. Rumors said 600 had finally caught one of the shooters they wanted. His funeral got shot up days later, and the word around the streets was that Boo himself ordered it. A few weeks after that, on December 3rd, 2011, another hit went down. A 16-year-old named Dale from STL EBT got gunned down while walking to a store. Sources said D.Rose from 600 and T-Roy from O-Block handled that one, both of them close to Boo. Nothing was proven, but the timing said everything. These hits became what people started calling street justice. Nobody in 600 cared about courtrooms or trials. In their world, there was only one rule. You hit us, we hit you back twice. That cycle turned the South Side into a war zone where every loss demanded another. People began avoiding the 60th block after dark because gunfire became the nightly soundtrack. Police reports started stacking up but led nowhere. Detectives noted multiple shootings linked to the same groups, but nobody ever talked. The silence in those neighborhoods was stronger than fear. It was loyalty. Boo knew that silence was their best weapon. He started controlling how information moved, keeping things tight so no one outside the circle could betray them. By the end of 2011, Team 600 had lost 3 members in less than 6 months. The pain made them ruthless, and Boo carried that energy in his eyes. He walked the block with his hoodie up, his voice calm but his message clear. People who saw him said he didn't smile anymore, didn't hang out unless it was business. The young members started calling him the Heartless One. He wasn't heartless though, he was focused. He spent nights at makeshift memorials, lighting candles for the fallen, whispering promises nobody else could hear. Every mural on those walls became a reminder that peace wasn't an option. Some nights he stood alone in front of the wall on 60th and Indiana, looking at the spray-painted faces of Baldy, DeThong, and Lil Steve. The streetlights flickered, and the wind carried the sound of distant sirens. For a few minutes, he looked like any other young man mourning his brothers. Then he turned away. his hands deep in his hoodie, already thinking about the next move. That was the moment 600's story changed forever. It stopped being about building a crew and became about revenge, one bullet at a time. In Boo's mind, there was no going back because every friend gone meant another score waiting to be settled. And the block he built out of pride was slowly turning into a graveyard that demanded his loyalty every single night. By early 2012, the South Side was already drowning in violence, and every set had a fresh list of enemies. For 600, that year started with a death that changed everything again. It was February 2nd when Shaq, one of their members, got shot at a house party near 51st and Calumet. People said it was an argument that went left after someone from the 051 Young Money set pulled out a gun. Shaq didn't make it out alive, and that shooting became the spark that turned tension into a full-blown war. The 051 Young Money set wasn't just another block crew. They were a mix of black disciples and gangster disciples who held down the low-end area around 51st Street. Their territory stretched near Cottage Grove and went deep toward Drexel. They had names that carried weight too. People like Lil Mark, Drilla, Ario, and 051 Melly were already known for sliding on rivals. They had money, guns, and connections that made them one of the most respected hybrid sets in the city. When Shaq got killed, the 600 block lit up overnight. Everyone wanted to retaliate because that wasn't just a member, that was family. Boo took charge of the response immediately. He called in his closest people like C-Dye, S. Dot, and Rondo Nembanine. They met at a small apartment near 59th Street and started mapping out moves. Boo didn't like talking on the phone or texting plans because he knew police were watching. Everything he did was face-to-face, and everything stayed inside the circle. The first retaliation came quick, and it set a tone that nobody would forget. On April 28th, a young member from STL EBT named Doc got chased down near 63rd and St. Lawrence. Witnesses said two shooters wearing black hoodies jumped out of a car, shot him multiple times, and ran toward King Drive. Rumors spread fast that the shooters were from 600, possibly C-Dye and S. Dot, taking revenge for Shaq's murder. That killing sent a message to every rival set that Boo and his people were not letting anything slide. But revenge only brought more chaos. 2 months later, on June 22nd, a 14-year-old named Fathead, who was affiliated with 051 Young Money, got killed near 50th and Calumet. Witnesses said a group of older teens chased him through the block before he got shot in the back and head. Police detained a few people for questioning, but released them days later. Online pages started linking C-Dye and another 600 member named S. Dot to the shooting again. Whether that was true or not, the streets believed it. That killing hit 051 hard because Fathead was young and still in school. His death flipped the anger back towards 600 even stronger. 051 members started making songs, throwing disses, and dropping names. On YouTube, people from both sides mocked the dead, tagging each other in comments and posting old pictures of rivals. The internet became another battlefield, and every video felt like a death announcement waiting to happen. At this point, the city felt smaller because everything connected. MOB, Gyro City, and 051 were trading information and weapons. 600 built closer ties with O Block and Front Street, trying to stay prepared. Boo stood in the middle of it all like a general. He was the one organizing the retaliation runs, choosing which blocks to hit, and deciding when to fall back. The young ones looked up to him like he had all the answers, but he was learning to carry the pressure alone. People started saying that Boo was the man who didn't miss. They said if he came looking for you, your time was already up. Nobody knew how many bodies he had, but Street Talk said his count was growing. Some claimed he was behind Polo's murder from 051. Others said he had a hand in the Lil Scrap shooting later on. None of that ever hit court records, but in Chicago, rumors carry more weight than facts. The shootings became nightly music. Residents around 59th through 63rd said they could hear gunfire like clockwork. Police scanners caught calls every few minutes. One night it would be 051's side getting hit. The next it would be someone from 600 bleeding in an alley. The people who lived there got used to ducking when they heard popping sounds. Children stopped playing outside after sunset, and older folks stopped looking out their windows. Everyone knew something bad could happen anytime. Boo became more than just a shooter in people's eyes. He was turning into a myth that kids whispered about. They said he could walk through enemy territory alone and nobody would touch him. They said he used to wear all black with a ski mask and no chain, just his T-cap and gloves. Whether those stories were true or not, they built his legend, and every time someone tried to challenge it, another name got added to the list of the dead. Around the same time, Chicago media started picking up the pattern. Local blogs began connecting the dots between 600 and 051 Young Money, calling it one of the bloodiest feuds in the city. Detectives tried to interview residents, but nobody spoke. Everyone feared being labeled a snitch because that title was worse than death in that world. The cops could patrol every hour, but they couldn't stop what was already moving. Inside 600, the losses kept piling up, but so did their reputation. Every retaliation made their name louder. Boo didn't celebrate any of it though. He wasn't the type to dance in videos or brag online. People said he just nodded when he heard who got hit, then went back to cleaning his gun in silence. By the end of 2012, the war had stretched far beyond just 60th and 51st. It pulled in friends, cousins, and affiliates from all over the South Side. Nobody remembered what the argument at that party was even about anymore. The beef had become its own machine, running on revenge and fear. Boo was still leading, still watching every move, but even he knew it was getting out of control. The block that once echoed with music and laughter now carried the sound of gunfire and tires screeching. People didn't walk home the same way twice, and mothers prayed harder each night. For Boo, the streets had chosen him to lead a war he never planned to fight this long. And with every death, his shadow grew heavier, turning him from just another street soldier into a name that even enemies whispered quietly. By late 2012, Chicago was already drowning in blood, but the streets around King Drive felt like they had their own storm. The 051 beef wasn't cooling down, and another front had opened with men of business, known simply as MOB. That crew was mostly gangster disciples posted near 59th and Wabash, but they were connected to 051 and Jarrow City. They shared enemies, shared guns, and shared revenge lists. When 600 stepped deeper into that war, every night became a test of survival. MOB had their own hitters. Names like Lil Scrap, Dro Philly, and Floyd started showing up in police reports linked to shootouts near Washington Park. Boo knew those names well because he was studying every rival's pattern, every hangout, and every family connection. He wasn't reacting anymore. He was calculating. He wanted to know who moved where, what car they drove, and which side of the street they walked on. To him, this wasn't just revenge anymore. It was strategy. One of the early incidents that set everything off was the shootout between Dro Philly and a 600 affiliate named Floyd in 2012. That night, gunfire erupted near 60th and Indiana. The shooting left one man injured and another on the run. Dro Philly ended up getting caught with a weapon later that week and turned state's evidence after a plea deal. In the streets, that was a death sentence. Boo made sure everyone in 600 knew not to ever fold or talk. He told them loyalty was the only thing that mattered because once you broke that, you couldn't come back. The wars around that time were brutal. In late 2012 and early 2013, 600 and MOB traded names in graffiti like it was a scoreboard. Walls on Prairie said MOBK, and a few blocks away MOB tagged 600 dead. Every tag meant somebody was plotting something. Songs became coded threats, and even rappers who didn't shoot were helping spark the violence. LA Capone and E-Die dropped verses dissing rival sets, while MOB rappers fired back in their own tracks. The music gave faces to the beef, making the killers sound like celebrities. In one of those chaotic weeks, LA Capone got shot in the leg during a drive-by near 61st Street. People said it was MOB or Jarrow City sliding through. Boo visited him at the hospital, standing quiet while the younger rapper laughed through the pain. That moment showed how close the street and the studio had become. Rappers were no longer safe because every lyric could bring bullets. Boo's name started growing inside and outside the hood. People were calling him the 007 of Chiraq, half joking, half respectful. They said he was calm like a secret agent but deadly like a hitman. When people saw him step out dressed in all black with the cap pulled low, they knew something was about to happen. Nobody said it out loud, but the street believed that if Boo spun, somebody wasn't coming home. He ran 600 like a small army. Every recruit had to learn how to handle a Glock, load clips, and move quietly. Boo taught them to never text about missions, never talk on the phone, and never brag about a slide. He told them the phone was the devil because it recorded everything. His discipline was why 600 stayed organized when other sets fell apart. They weren't just shooting blindly, they were hunting with precision. During the day, Boo stayed low-key, barely leaving the block unless it was necessary. He spent afternoons with a few trusted people, smoking, watching old drill videos, or checking who was dissing 600 online. At night, things changed. That's when he moved. The streets were his work zone, and he liked it quiet. People said he would ride through enemy territory in a tinted car, windows down just enough to spot faces. Some nights he came back before sunrise, smelling like gunpowder and weed. Other nights he'd sit in the trap with his guys, telling stories about the old days while loading bullets. Even though the streets painted him as a monster, he had small moments that showed another side. Boo had a kid, a little boy who barely saw him, but always bragged that his dad was a boss. Sometimes Boo would drop by his baby mama's place on 59th, bringing sneakers or toys, sitting quietly for a while before heading back out. He didn't know how to be normal anymore because his world was built on paranoia. He once told a friend that peace felt like a setup. By 2013, everyone in Chicago's drill culture knew about the 600 and MOB beef. Both sides had lost too many people, but neither was backing down. MOB started working closer with 051 Young Money, forming an alliance known as Melly Way after an 051 member got killed. That move brought even more guns to the fight and pushed the war deeper into the neighborhoods near Washington Park. Boo knew they were outnumbered, but he didn't care. He believed that precision beat numbers. He kept his crew close and his plans tighter. He moved like a man who already accepted that his ending was written. Every night felt like another chapter in a story that couldn't finish clean. The younger members worshipped him, trying to move like he did, talk like he did, even dress like him. But they didn't carry the same calmness. They wanted fame, and Boo hated that. He thought the internet made killers reckless. The violence around that time was like a rhythm, steady and cruel. Reports came in almost daily about shootings tied to either 600 or MOB. Each one was another layer in the same story that never stopped repeating. Boo stood at the center of it, holding his set together through fear, loyalty, and a code nobody dared to break. The mix of music and murder became normal. Rappers turned real-life shootings into lyrics, and fans turned those lyrics into legends. The lines between the art and the streets disappeared. Boo didn't rap, but his name lived inside those songs like a ghost. Every verse about revenge carried his shadow. By the end of that year, 600 was stronger and bloodier than ever. Boo's leadership had turned them into one of the most feared sets in the city, but that power came with a cost. Enemies multiplied, and the pressure around him grew heavier. He was becoming what the streets demanded, a man who survived by staying one step ahead of death. And deep inside, he probably knew that one day, the same streets that made him would come back for him. By 2013, the Chicago drill movement had exploded beyond the streets that created it. Chief Keef's rise turned every South Side neighborhood into a symbol, and sets like O Block and 600 became part of the culture people couldn't stop watching. What used to be private street politics was now public entertainment. Bloggers, fans, and outsiders treated Chicago like a movie, replaying diss tracks and news clips like scenes from a film. Team 600 was living in that spotlight. Their songs were catching views, their members were gaining fame, and their block was becoming famous for all the wrong reasons. L.A. Capone, the youngest star from the set, was leading that wave. He had a smooth flow and carried himself with the confidence of someone who knew his moment was coming. His track Play for Keeps with Rondo No. 9 became an anthem for their side. Rappers like E-Die, Tay 600, and C-Die were building their names too, but L.A. was different. He had that charisma that made labels look his way. Even Boo, who wasn't into the music side, saw the potential. He liked how LA talked about loyalty and real pain, not just fame. People said Boo used to pull up to the studio, sitting in the back while LA recorded, never saying much but always watching. He saw the kid as more than a rapper. He was proof that someone from their block could make it out. But in Chicago, fame had a short lifespan. September the 26th, 2013 was the night everything changed. L.A. Capone had just finished recording at a studio near 70th and Stony Island Avenue. It was late, and he was walking out with a friend when two men wearing hoodies came from the side alley. They followed quietly before opening fire. Witnesses said the shots echoed through the block, and L.A. tried to run but collapsed near the corner. He was hit in the thigh and lower back, one bullet cutting through an artery. He was rushed to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, but he didn't survive the surgery. He was just 17 years old. Police began investigating within hours, tracing security footage and phone records. They eventually arrested 3 suspects linked to Jarrow City: Michael Buchanan, Saki Hardy Johnson, and Michael Mays. According to the reports, Buchanan was the driver and Hardy Johnson was the shooter. The motive came down to retaliation and gang rivalry. In 2016, Buchanan was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to 45 years in prison. The streets saw it as justice on paper, but nobody from 600 believed that erased the loss. When news of LA's death hit the block, Boo went quiet. People who knew him said he didn't talk for hours. He just stood outside on 60th Street, hoodie on, staring at the ground while others cried around him. LA wasn't just another body to him. He was family. He had trained him, protected him, and saw him as the next generation of their movement. That loss hardened him even more. The next night, people from the block held a candlelight vigil near King Drive. They played LA's songs, shared stories, and prayed, but the peace didn't last. Around midnight, a car rolled past the crowd and started shooting. 2 people got hit, one in the arm and another in the leg. Police said it was a drive-by, most likely revenge from a rival set, maybe Jarrow or MOB. Nobody was arrested, and the cycle started again. After that, Boo wasn't just leading 600, he was enforcing its wrath. He stopped letting younger ones handle the hits and started moving himself. The stories about him became louder. People started saying if Boo sent you on a mission, you came back with a body. That quote spread across Chicago's drill pages like gospel. The name Lil Boo started appearing in Reddit threads, YouTube comments, and fan-made documentaries. They called him Boo 4X, a nickname symbolizing 4 confirmed bodies, though nobody knew for sure. Boo never addressed any of it publicly, but his silence made it worse. Every time someone from an opposing set died, the internet blamed him. Some fans treated him like a ghost story, others like a folk hero. On Reddit's drill discussions, users called him one of the real ones, saying he was the type who didn't rap about violence. He lived it. Even rival fans respected how he never bragged or folded. Within the city, his legend grew faster than anyone could control. Chicago detectives started naming him in unofficial reports as a potential threat leader for 600. They said he influenced younger shooters and ordered retaliation hits. But Boo saw himself differently. To him, it wasn't leadership, it was defense. He believed every bullet was payback for a face on a mural. By winter, 600's reputation was bigger than ever. Their songs were on the radio, their videos were trending, and their names were in every online discussion about drill music. But behind the screens, the block was on fire. Police sirens echoed nightly, and ambulances became a common sight near Washington Park. The area between 59th and 63rd turned into one of the city's deadliest zones. People who lived nearby said they could tell when 600 was outside. The cars were tinted, the music was loud, and everyone moved like they were watching every shadow. Boo controlled the block like a general. He decided when people could move, when they could chill, and when it was time to slide. Nobody questioned him because he earned that respect through blood. Still, the fame didn't sit well with him. He didn't like how outsiders talked about the war like entertainment. He once told a close friend, "They love the music, but they don't feel the funerals." Those who knew him said he was starting to look tired, like every death was taking a piece out of him. By the end of 2013, Boo had everything the streets respected: power, fear, and a name that carried weight across the city. But those same things made him a target. Enemies wanted the glory of saying they caught Lil Boo lacking. Police wanted the headlines of saying they finally locked him down. And even inside his own camp, people started moving differently, worried about how long they could keep surviving. That year made 600 legends, but it also cursed them. Every hit, every diss, every body added to the myth. Boo stood in the center of it, quiet and controlled, while the streets whispered his name like a prayer. He was no longer just a soldier. He was the symbol of what Chicago drill had become: music, murder, and memories painted in blood. By 2014, Chicago was deep in what locals called revenge season. Every week brought new names, new murals, and new rumors. For Team 600, that year would define their story and mark the beginning of their downfall. The city's streets were split by invisible lines, and everyone knew which side they stood on. Every shooting had history behind it, and every death carried a message. The first major headline that year hit in February when a known gangster disciple named Vincent Big V Sanders from Taekwon World was killed near 71st and East End. He was found inside a car with multiple gunshot wounds, his phone still in his hand. Street sources started whispering that the hit was payback for the earlier killing of L.A. Capone. Names floated fast, and one name that kept coming up was Lil Boo. Some claimed he ordered the move himself. Others said he was there watching from a car park nearby. Nothing was proven, but in Chicago's drill scene, the rumor was enough to make it truth. 2 weeks later, another murder shook the city. On February 22nd, a 28-year-old man named Javon Boyd, a livery cab driver, was sitting in his silver Dodge when 2 gunmen walked up and opened fire. The shooting happened on the 3700 block of South Princeton Avenue in the Bronzeville neighborhood. Boyd was hit 7 times, including shots to his hand and back. He was taken to Northwestern Memorial Hospital, but was pronounced dead shortly after. What made this case different was how fast it caught attention. Surveillance footage from the area captured a dark-colored vehicle circling the block before the attack. That car was later linked to Clint Rondo No. 9 Massey and Courtney Zadai Ely, both from 600. Prosecutors said they drove up to Boyd's car and fired into it because they believed he was affiliated with a rival set. But Boyd wasn't in the streets. He was a working man who had just picked up a fare. Court files showed that detectives traced the shooting back to Rondo and Zadai after finding their fingerprints on the vehicle used. A mounted camera from a nearby building caught Rondo stepping out moments before the shots rang out. Both men were arrested within days, and by 2016, Zadai was sentenced to 38 years, while Rondo received 39. Police reports mentioned that Boo's name came up during interviews. Some witnesses suggested he knew about the hit or gave the order. No charges were filed against him, but his name was now part of official paperwork. The streets took it differently. They believed Boo had been calling the plays from behind the scenes. To them, that cab driver wasn't random. They thought the shooters mistook him for someone else tied to MOB or 051. In that kind of war, mistakes didn't matter. Only revenge did. Every side accepted casualties as part of the game. Around that same time, 600 took another hit when one of their own, D.Rose, got arrested for the murder of Big V. Police said he was identified through a witness and surveillance video that placed him near the scene. D.Rose was 17, but already considered one of the most feared shooters in 600. He went to trial in 2016 and was sentenced to 40 years in prison. The crew lost another soldier, and Boo's core circle was shrinking fast. The back and forth didn't stop. In late March, Chicago woke up to another killing that made national headlines. Demetrius Lil Mark Stewart, a rapper from 051 Young Money, was shot multiple times while standing at a bus stop on 51st Street. Police found over 10 shell casings scattered near the corner. He was pronounced dead at the scene. Within hours, a video titled "No Competition" surfaced online, showing 600 members laughing and mocking the shooting. Fans online pointed at Boo again, saying he was behind the hit or had sent his crew to do it. Theories said it was revenge for L.A. Capone and that Boo wanted to make it personal. That clip of laughter and disses spread across YouTube, turning the tragedy into another viral moment. To outsiders, it looked like chaos. To those inside, it was survival. Every shooting fed the myth of 600's dominance. But behind the scenes, the police were watching closely. Detectives tagged almost every new killing as gang-related, marking names like MOB, O-Block, and 051 in the same reports. But none of those cases were getting solved. People in those neighborhoods didn't talk, and cops didn't push too hard because they assumed the victims were part of the cycle. For Boo, that year was pressure from every direction. His crew was losing members to prison, and rivals were doubling down. Still, he moved the same way, quiet, organized, and focused. He barely used phones, meeting only face-to-face, and only with trusted people. Those who knew him said he had become paranoid, checking every car that passed and watching rooftops for lookouts. Midway through 2014, Boo caught a weapons charge after police raided a house on 59th Street. They found 2 unregistered handguns and a small bag of weed. He didn't fight it because fighting it would bring more attention. The charge sent him to Cook County Jail for a few months. Inside, he kept to himself, rarely talking to other inmates. Some said he spent most of his time writing lists of names and sketching maps of rival blocks. When he got out near the end of that year, the city felt different. Most of his closest friends were either locked up or gone. The younger generation was wild, posting pictures of guns on Instagram and threatening ops online. Boo didn't like it because that kind of fame brought heat. He told one of his homies, "These shorties don't get it. They chasing views, not respect." But the internet had changed everything, and even he couldn't control it. By December 2014, the city counted over 400 homicides, many tied to the same small circle of neighborhoods. Reporters started naming Team 600 in articles alongside 051 Young Money and MOB, calling them some of the most violent groups in Chicago. Boo's name kept floating in the background, always in whispers, never in print. People knew he was still calling shots even when his hands weren't on the trigger. That year left 600 standing tall but bleeding. They had lost their rising rappers, their key shooters, and their peace. Boo walked the same streets he helped defend, now filled with fresh faces trying to make a name the way he once did. The line between music and murder had vanished completely, and the war he helped lead had no finish line in sight. By the start of 2015, the streets of Chicago were already restless again. Every winter there was a short silence when the cold kept people inside, but as soon as the snow began to fade, the guns came back out. For 600, it was already war season before spring even hit. Tay 600 had just dropped his remix to computers, a diss track aimed straight at 051, Young Money, and MOB. The lyrics named enemies directly, calling out fallen members and mocking their sets. That song caught fire on YouTube, and within days the comments were filled with threats. 051 took it personal, and that heat came back toward everyone wearing the 600 name. Boo knew the rules of that game. Diss songs weren't just entertainment, they were invitations. Every bar that mentioned a name carried weight in the streets. Boo didn't rap, but he carried the responsibility for what came with those lyrics. People said he warned Tay to move smarter, to chill on the dissing. But by that point, the energy was already out there. Around February, an Instagram post from a known 051 member named Ario started spreading. It read, "Another man down coming soon." The caption had laughing emojis, But everyone in the drill scene knew it wasn't a joke. That post was directed at 600, and everyone could feel the tension building again. Boo started moving more carefully, wearing a vest whenever he stepped outside. He stopped staying long at one spot and avoided moving in groups. Still, he was too deep in the game to ever move like a civilian. People close to him said Boo had become distant those last few months. He still gave orders, still checked in on his younger homies, but he wasn't hanging out like before. He started meeting people late at night, always switching cars and routes. He told one of his boys, "If I get caught lacking, it's my fault." That kind of talk scared people because it sounded like he was expecting it. Rumors started floating that Boo had been set up before the hit even happened. Some said a woman had lured him into a certain area, telling him to pull up for something small. Others said he was followed for days before they caught him. Nobody really knew the full story, but everyone agreed that the timing felt too perfect. April 3rd, 2015 was a bright Friday morning on the south side. Boo had been out near 58th and King Drive, close to Washington Park. The area was quiet around that time of day, mostly older folks walking to the store and kids heading to school. Around 11:30 a.m., a gold sedan rolled slowly down the street. Witnesses said it circled once, stopped, then rolled again. Boo was walking on the sidewalk wearing a black hoodie and jeans. He looked calm, unaware that the car behind him was about to end everything. According to police reports, the car pulled up beside him. A man stepped out, aimed, and started firing. The shots came fast, more than 10 in total. Boo tried to run, but only made it a few steps before collapsing. Witnesses later told reporters that the gunman fired at close range before jumping back into the car and speeding off toward 59th Street. Boo lay face down near the curb, bleeding heavily from his side and back. People nearby started screaming. A woman who lived across the street said she ran out and saw him trying to breathe. She yelled for someone to call 911 while another man tried to keep him conscious. Paramedics arrived minutes later and began chest compressions before rushing him to Northwestern Memorial Hospital. He was pronounced dead at 12:08 p.m. CBS Chicago covered the story that evening, identifying the victim as 22-year-old Jerome "Lil Boo" Anderson, a documented gang member from Team 600. They reported that the shooting happened in broad daylight and that no suspects were in custody. DNA Info also published a detailed article the next day, describing the gold car and quoting witnesses who said they saw a young man jump out, shoot, and run. Within hours, social media lit up with theories. Some said Ario from 051 was arrested that same afternoon, claiming it was connected to Boo's murder. Others said MOB was behind it, calling it payback for Lil Scrap's death. The truth was never confirmed. Chicago police never released a suspect name publicly, and no one was ever convicted. But in the streets, people had already made up their minds. They believed it was 051 that finally caught Boo slipping. When news reached 600, chaos broke loose. Some cried, others started loading their weapons. Boo's death didn't just hurt, it ripped through the foundation of the whole set. He wasn't just their enforcer, he was their leader, their example, the man everyone thought couldn't be touched. Within hours, murals started popping up with his face, and people posted "Long Live Boo" across every social platform. The block that night was filled with candles, liquor bottles, and silence. Everyone knew retaliation was coming. The following week, friends painted a mural on 60th in Indiana showing Boo with angel wings and a crown. His son's name was written at the bottom, surrounded by hearts. It was a strange mix of love and loss. Kids walked past it on their way to school, not realizing that picture was more than art. It was a warning that the streets never let anyone keep their throne for long. Reporters later said police had detained a teenager in connection with the case, but released him due to lack of evidence. Nobody else came forward. Like most murders in that war, Boo's killing became another unsolved file collecting dust. After his funeral, the block turned quiet again. The music slowed down, and even the toughest voices went silent for a while. Boo's mother attended the service surrounded by dozens of young men who had followed her son. Some of them stood there crying. Others just stared at the casket, not believing the man who taught them everything was gone. In the weeks that followed, 600's structure began to crumble. Stello tried to hold things together, but he didn't have Boo's presence. Without him, the younger ones started moving reckless, chasing revenge without strategy. More shootings followed, but the unity was gone. That morning on April 3rd wasn't just another hit, it was the end of an era. Boo's name would live on in songs, hashtags, and hood stories, but his voice was gone. The man who once controlled the rhythm of the streets was now another mural under the sun. That morning, Chiraq lost one of his loudest guns. Boo's death didn't end the war, it only refueled it. Within days of his funeral, gunfire echoed again on the south side. Rumors spread that 051 lost a member named China O. and what people called the first get back for Boo. Police found a young man shot multiple times near 53rd Street, but nobody cooperated. On social media, 600 members posted cryptic messages that confirmed what everyone already knew. The cycle had started again. That wave of retaliation never really stopped. By 2017, Chicago was still bleeding, and the ghosts of that war were still walking the streets. That spring, 2 women known as White Girl and Nana were killed in a car near 75th and Stewart. Witnesses said a vehicle pulled up and opened fire without warning. Police later connected the shooters to 600 affiliates, Mikado and Lil Scud. The street said it was revenge for Boo and for others lost before him. When both women died, people started calling it the White Girl and Nana hit, another link in a chain of endless payback. Then came 2018, another bloody year. Dusky the Man, one of MOB's rising rappers, was shot and killed near 84th Street. His music had carried the same war Boo once fought, but from the opposite side. The next day, MOB came back hard, killing a 600 affiliate named Waldo near Cottage Grove. That quick turnaround reminded everyone that the war had never ended, only changed faces. The younger members from both sides began calling themselves the Get Back Gang, living by the same rule Boo once enforced. Every name that fell demanded another, and everybody that dropped had to be answered. The violence no longer felt personal. It was tradition. By then, 600 was barely recognizable. Most of their older members were dead or locked up. The ones still around had scattered across the city. Stello, Boo's co-founder, was killed in July 2015, shot while driving through rival territory. His death sealed the set's fate. The murals of Boo and his brothers started fading under layers of fresh paint. Yet, even as years passed, kids in those same streets kept throwing the same hand signs, chasing a legacy that had already buried their heroes. After Boo's death, his name refused to fade. Inside interviews and music, his legend kept breathing. Tay 600 spoke in several podcasts about how Boo was more than a shooter, saying he was the one who taught discipline, patience, and respect. He described him as a man who didn't brag, who just handled business quietly. 600 Breezy kept that same energy in his lyrics, shouting "Long live Lil Boo" on tracks like "Stop Playin'," reminding fans that Boo's presence still guided the block. Online, Boo's reputation turned into a digital ghost. On YouTube, comments under old drill videos debated how many bodies he really had. Some said 4, others said more, but nobody really knew. Fan pages built timelines of his rumored hits, turning the man into something larger than life. The media called him a documented gang member, using the same phrase police reports used after his death. But in the neighborhoods he came from, he was remembered as a protector and a teacher, not just a trigger man. His story spread through documentaries, podcasts, and drill history channels, shaping him into a symbol of what Chicago's streets produced. In the drill culture, killers become icons because their names carry power. Fame becomes survival, and survival becomes status. Boo's name still floats in those corners, painted on walls, mentioned in songs, whispered in stories. He became both the warning and the memory, the face of loyalty, violence, and tragedy, all mixed together. In Chiraq, legends don't really die. They just turn into hashtags that never stop circulating through the same streets that created them.